about the way cash crisis works.
Talking about Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the one factor you do this thing they're called monetary awareness.
Next recession.
Recession will be
A recession.
We're going to hit a recession.
The date of the next recession.
a U.S.-only recession typically lasts 8 to 10 months, but a lot of things about this particular one have not been typical. So
a crash is coming now, whether it's 6 months from now, 12 months, 36 months, no one knows.
I go to bed every night, I dream of another recession. If you know what to do, if you have the right plan to set up, you can make a lot of money from this.
Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RT News updates. And as you tell from today's title, we're going to be talking about the fallacy of retirement in and of itself, based upon this statement here saying that 42% of Americans don't have $10,000 saved up and would not be able to retire or would retire and be broke. And so that statement in and of itself is kind of deceiving, because here's the thing: if you don't have any money saved up at all, how could you retire? And then it leads me to ask another question: where did the idea of retiring really come into play? And is it a concept that is still relevant in today's economy, since it was introduced over 100 years ago, where people were not living as long and the expectancy of a healthy, long life was very short, which made it easier for governments as well as employers to offer pensions and things of that nature, or guaranteed income for life. So before I dive into today's articles, I want to encourage you as always to click the subscribe button for more RT News updates as well as interviews. And if you're new to RTD altogether, I want to encourage you to visit the RTD University page, where I put together all my prior interviews dealing with monetary matters as well as fiscal policy and the importance of having sound money in your possession today. So let's dive into today's articles. So today, as I mentioned, I have 4 articles dealing with the whole concept of retirement and its origin, and some of the things that should be of concern as of today, which in my opinion will alter the belief of the whole idea of being able to retire at a certain age and be able to live the rest of your life with expectation of receiving some form of income. But before I actually get into the articles, I want to actually touch on the idea of how to define and what's the definition of a fallacy. And so according to the definition here given, it says a mistaken belief, especially one based upon unsound argument. And so a mistaken belief and an unsound argument. And so I pose that idea of a retirement fallacy based upon the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, the retirement concept and the word and usage of it in of itself, when it was introduced, years and years ago, it was based upon solving a problem at that current moment, in a way of trying to incentivize employees at the time to continue to give their very best and then be able to receive some type of long-term benefit at the very end after they've given their contribution to society, and be able to enjoy the rest of your lives with some form of income. But yet that concept and that belief was established upon the fact that during that time, medicine wasn't as good. There was no technology to really extend life. So people weren't really living to see full-fledged retirement age, in which was roughly 60 to 70 years old back during that time. And then even prior to the retirement concept, during the agricultural age, people worked up until they left this planet, or when they became disabled in the form of some physical disability, then their family members or whatnot would then take on the responsibility of helping to care for those individuals. But never the idea of working hard, setting money aside, having that money grow for you in the marketplace, and then one day down the line you can withdraw from it and then be guaranteed income for the rest of your life without even being able to really determine how long you're going to be alive. So that belief model, in my opinion, is changing and has changed a long time ago, but I believe our mindsets haven't really adjusted to the fact that, based upon monetary policy and how it impacts economies around the world, the idea of being able to expect income for the rest of your life is no longer something that people should really be holding on to, as far as that guarantee of income for life. So I believe that the belief of being able to receive income for the rest of your life has shifted already, but a lot of people haven't really seemed to adopt that mindset. So that being the case, I wanted to dive into those articles. So briefly, I'm going to thumb through these 4 articles and give you something to think about, but more importantly, as always, take time for yourself to scroll below and click the links to read them for yourself. Just want to give you an idea of what's going on the surface. And as always, if you find this subject matter important, please share this video with others so that they can become more aware on the importance of understanding the retirement concept, and how I believe the concept of retiring has already changed, but a lot of people haven't really adapted to it. So let's dive into the very first one. So here we have an article from The Atlantic. It says how retirement was invented. So I'm gonna give you an idea of the history behind the word retirement. The very next one is from The Economist, and it says the end of retirement, and it has a lot to do with demographics and how, as time has changed, the governmental policies as well as just the financial concepts behind saving and investing hasn't really changed to actually equate to enough money being set aside for people to actually live to enjoy for the rest of their lives. So quite interesting. Next one here. Next article here is from CNBC, and it says 42% of Americans are at risk of retiring broke, based upon a recent study from Go Banking Rates. And then the very last one here. Special report, Fidelity puts 6 million savers on risky path to retirement. So here's the idea that there's a major financial institution that's in charge of a lot of money for 6 million people, and some of their monetary or their financial practices aren't really sound given the environment we're in now with all this volatility in the stock markets as well as the bond market. So that's something that plays into this whole shift of mind that needs to take place. So let's dive into the very first one. So here we have the very first one from The Atlantic, and it says how retirement was invented. It says the earliest schemes for financial support in old age were pegged to life expectancy. And so I'll thumb through it briefly, but more importantly, take time to read it for yourself. Give you an idea of what's going on here. It says in 1881, Otto von Bismarck, the conservative minister president of Prussia, presented a radical idea to the Reichstag, government-run financial support for older members of society. It says, in other words, retirement. The idea was radical because back then people simply did not retire. It says if you were alive, you worked probably on a farm, or if you were wealthier, managed a farm or a large estate. But von Bismarck was under pressure from socialist opponents to do better by the people in his country. And so he argued to the Reichstag that those who are disabled from work by age and invalidly will have well-grounded claim to care from the state. It would take 8 years, but by the end of the decade, the German government would create a retirement system, which provided for citizens over the age of 70 if they lived that long. So there you have the idea of how the whole retirement system was kind of brought into play. It was based upon the fact that they were betting that at that time, a lot of people were not going to live beyond 70 years old. And it so happens that a lot of people did live beyond 70 years old. And then the government began taking on burdens of figuring out how to pay for that at the time, because it really wasn't a well thought out plan. And so if you're interested, you can find out more information as to how it evolved into what we have now. And I'll actually give you an idea of how the whole pension system started here in America. It says by the 1920s, a variety of American industries from railroads to oil, banking, were promising their workers some sort of support for their later years. It says in 1875, the American Express Company started offering private pensions. So American Express Company was a major corporation that offered a pension system. 1875. So that puts us well over 140 years or so that the idea of a retirement has been in play. And so since then, I would imagine that the governments and banking sector in that time would have never have known or thought about the impact of monetary policy from central banks and how it would impact the economies and make the idea of actually earning interest on your investments that much more difficult. So just more information there if you're interested in reading for yourself. Hey there, just want to take a quick minute to interrupt this video to remind you to visit the rethinkingthedollar.com website, where you get a chance to see all of my postings as well as educational resources, and as well as visit the RTD store where I have some free material for you as well as some t-shirts. And if you're interested in being more of a blessing to Rethinking the Dollar, I want to encourage you to visit the RTD donation page where I have a couple links there for you to contribute to this alternative media of work. Other than that, let's get back to the show. The next article here from The Economist, it says the end of retirement, and it is a quite lengthy article, but just to give you an idea what's going on here, it talks about how the whole retirement concept has shifted over the last, 40, 50 years, with the baby boomers being the generation that really will be the first true experiment on how this system plays out, because there's more and more baby boomers that's entering into the retirement phase, and the demographics do no longer support the idea of enough workers being able to purchase stocks and bonds and investment tools that will then spin off for the retirees to withdraw from. So it says first, in most rich countries, women no longer have enough babies to keep up the numbers, and the huge baby booming generation born after the Second World War has begun to retire. It says in 1950, the OECD countries had 7 people aged 20 to 64 for every one of a 65 and older person. So there were 7 people per one retiree at that time. And it says now it is 4 to 1. So 4 current workers in comparison to 1 retiree. And it says on course to be 2 workers for every 1 retiree by 2050. It says that will ruin the pay-as-you-go state pension schemes that provide the bulk of retirement income for countries. So the idea of, paying to play or being able to make promises based upon having younger generations come into the workforce to basically tax them to pay the retirees, that model is coming to an end because less people are actually investing nowadays because most people are strapped with not having enough disposable income to live, nevertheless set something aside for their retirement. So that's another reason why the fallacy of believing that retirement will be there for you when you get older is not going to be the case. So more information below if you're interested in reading it. Next article here from CNBC, it says 42% of Americans are at risk of retiring broke. So there again, how can you retire if you're broke? You can't. But yet the way that's worded is kind of deceiving because they make it seem like you're supposed to expect to retire. And the prior article mentions that things have already shifted and changing. Now it's a matter of you change your perspective on an idea of retiring, because most people, it's good to say after the whole next economic downturn, their plans will be altered and they will not be able to retire or to live off the rest of their older days with comfort. So they may be forced back into the workforce. But give you an idea what's going on here. It says nearly half of Americans have less than 10,000 stashed away for retirement, according to a report by Go Banking Rates. It says that for them, a series of lack of planning coupled with a longer life expectancy has destroyed any retirement dream. Here we have, it says more than half of millennials have less than 10,000 saved for retirement. So it shows a little graph here. It says 18.9 have saved 0. It says 39.2 have saved less than 10,000. And then it says, why aren't Americans saving for retirement? And then it gives you a couple of reasons here. And the number one reason is I don't make enough money. And the very last one is I use my retirement savings for an emergency. So we have not having enough money and then needing money for emergencies, and everything in between are more likely just reasons to why people aren't able to put aside money. And it has nothing to do with the fact that people are being irresponsible. It's more so the environment that we're in and the fact that the cost of living is going up tremendously. Why? Because of the Federal Reserve note not retaining its purchasing power. Makes it hard for people to actually stick stuff aside and the cost of living not to go up along the way. So more information there if you're interested to read for yourself. Very last article here is from Reuters, and it's a special report. It says Fidelity puts 6 million savers on risky path to retirement. And it is another lengthy article here, but basically summarize it up. It talks about the idea how since the last recession, the Great Recession, and even prior to that with the dot-com, standard financial practices by these institutions on trying to keep pace with return on investments for the amount of money they're taking care of for investors, they've become a little bit more riskier. And so a lot of people are questioning the approach that these institutions are taking with going heavy into stocks, knowing that the stock market is very volatile. And then also in the bond market, you have a lot of people put money into bonds. And we all know that governments can't really afford to pay back their debts without having to borrow more money, which basically devalues the current, worth of your assets anyway. But give an idea what's going on here, it says retirement plan sponsors and consultants who have pulled money from the Freedom Fund told Reuters that they lost faith in the Freedom Funds because of their history of underperformance, frequent strategy changes, and rising risk. So the Freedom Fund is in regards to the product that Fidelity offers, and so a lot of people are pulling out money. I want to say I read that they pulled out close to $16 billion over the last couple of years just because people are scared and concerned over risk. And so the idea that Fidelity has changed some of their investment strategies is causing people to be concerned. It says El Camino Hospital in Silicon Valley replaced Freedom Funds with T. Rowe Price's target date offering in 2015, citing historic underperformance and a new attempt to time global markets, according to a February 2015 investment. So the idea that this particular company is banking on being able to time the next market crash or whatnot is the equivalent of gambling in and of itself, because unless they have inside information, they will never know when the actual next economic downturn hits. And so as you can tell from the last couple of weeks with the volatility of the Dow moving the way it's moving, at any minute that thing could just really tank and the next official recession can be announced where you lose more than half of the Dow and S&P and everything else around the world. And then at that point, there will be no recovery whatsoever, because monetary policy would not be able to help that matter, because all they could do is try to print more money to pump up the stock market and bond market and everything else. So that's what's happening in the news. But I really want to touch on the idea of the retirement fallacy and introduce that concept of the belief of being able to set aside money that you would then be able to withdraw upon for the rest of your life, how that has already changed. And I'd imagine a lot of people who experienced some hurt and pain from the last Great Recession in the form of having lost a lot of their value or their wealth and from the stock market and from bonds, they are the ones that probably can tell you that their mindset and their beliefs has already changed, but yet it's the younger generation that is saving money and setting money aside in these products where companies are beginning to gamble chasing yield. So just stuff to consider in the days ahead, because the retirement concept, in my opinion, after this next market downturn will no longer be something that people are banking on. So just my thoughts, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this whole subject matter. Please leave a comment down below. And other than that, if you find us informative, please share this with family and friends so they themselves can be aware of the idea of the belief system behind the retirement concept has already changed and changing right now as we speak. So other than that, enjoy your day.